Okay, we're going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. His name is Landin Here's his little bio. He's from, and this is kind of a fun city to say, Walla Walla, Washington. That's like that. Sounds kind of fun. He moved to Utah in 2011, graduated from the U of U. He's the owner of Peak Appraiser Group, and he has, he's the father of 4 children, not the mother, on here is the father. He's an above average cook and a below average climber. So if you guys want to welcome Landin Arnett to the stage. Thank you.
Yes, I think so. Okay, hello, Realtors of Salt Lake City. I'm happy to be here with you. Like I said, I'm an appraiser. My name is Landin. And when I was telling my other appraiser buddies that I was going to do a class like this, they said, man, you are a brave man just allowing yourself to find the name of mom. But jokes aside, sometimes appraisers and agents, we find ourselves on somewhat opposite sides of the table because of what we do. We're on the different side of the table. Between us, we have a contract. You've worked really hard to negotiate this contract. You've got a great price. You've got concessions. You've negotiated rent backs. And I show up, I look at it, and go, damn. Right? And that sometimes can cost some issue. I think what I've noticed in my experience is that there's a bit of a gap between our understanding of each other and how we're taught, the practices we use from both sides. Most appraisers don't really know what the agent life is like and vice versa. So I think things like this are great, that we can kind of bridge those gaps, have a little bit better understanding about what each of us is doing. So that's what I want to talk about today, how to think like an appraiser. So it's a crash course in a little bit of how we as appraisers approach evaluation, how we think when it comes to selecting comps, some of the restrictions that are placed upon us when I'm selecting comparables, the adjustments I'm making, and then hopefully give you guys some more understanding so that when you do have an appraisal that comes in low or a bad appraisal, because some appraisers aren't great, you have some tools in your belt to do better reconsiderations of that. You can kind of talk to an appraiser maybe in their own terms to help we need to go back and argue with appraiser. So let's get to it. Like they said, I am graduated from the U. Go Utes. Yeah. I've been an appraiser since 2016. When I walked up, I think it said 19 plus years of appraising. Since 2016, I've been an appraiser, which feels like a long time to me, but the average age of an appraiser in the U.S. right now, I think, is in like its 50s or 60s, so I'm young compared to the majority, but I mean, for the last 6 years, has been the most important 6 years, so I think I've got all the experience I'm also an investor. About the time I got into appraising, my wife and I both started getting into investing. We own 9 properties, so I have that kind of perspective too in the investment world. And I'm also husband to the #1 appraiser in all of Utah. She's actually here with us today. Whoops, that didn't. There was an asterisk that said, according to me and my kids. I think she's awesome. So I have that perspective. I'm married to an agent, so I am proof that agents and appraisers can get along really well and cohabitat. I sit in the office all day next to a very high-producing, very great agent. And I hear what she's doing. I know what she's doing. I work with her in her business, in some operations and some marketing. So I'm very familiar with the plights of the agent world. So let's talk a little bit about what I do. Right? I do not protect anybody's interests. I've heard people say, "Oh, an appraiser's here just to, protect the lender from making bad investments," or your job is to protect the buyer from investing in something, paying too much for an asset. That is not what I do. I only can give one thing, and that is my opinion. I come, I look at facts, I give my unobjective opinion of value, regardless of how that's going to affect a bank, or a buyer, or a seller, or an agent. So, and because of what I do, I inherently am always reporting the past and not predicting the future. An appraiser must base his valuation on closed sales. Listings do not affect my appraised value. Neither do the number of offers you got. I don't need to see all of them. It's not going to affect it. Okay? It's got to be based on sold comparables. So I am always reporting the past, and hopefully I'm reporting the most recent past possible, the last 30, 60 to 90 days. Okay? But I know that agents, sometimes you're looking at the market and you think, okay, we're going to list here because that's where we think the market's going to be in a couple months. You might have to predict the future for your clients and look at listings. I have to base everything I do on closed sales. Okay? Now, when we're talking about value, value is an opinion. And it's going to differ on who you're asking. My opinion of the value of a home is different than the seller's opinion, the buyer's opinion, the agent's opinion, or the neighbor's opinion. Everyone's opinion is going to be different. So the value is not a singular point. It's not a truth that can be found. So anytime we're talking about value, and maybe we have different opinions of value, there is no singularity. Okay? There is no one right answer that we can arrive to. Okay? With that being said, value is a range. Okay? If we had 100 appraisers go out to a house, blind, without a purchase contract or anything like that, they were just going to do a refinance, we had them all appraise a home, it would look something like this. If you're familiar with statistical analysis, this is what's called a bell curve. Right? Well, we're going to have a median, an average here in the middle, and the majority of the appraisers are going to come in around this value. I put it here as like 530. And the farther away from the median value you go, the fewer and fewer appraisers, and the frequency you're going to get those values. Does that track with everyone? It would be the same if you had 100 agents do a CMA on a house. You're going to get something that looks like this. Okay? So again, I just want to note, value is fluid. Okay? And sometimes the range can be kind of small, sometimes it can be big. A range between 510 to 550, depending on your opinion, that's a big range. That can be a small range. When you start getting up into the millions, I think the range between 1.1 and 1.3 doesn't seem that big when you're talking about, big $1 million houses. But, a $200,000 range for a small house could seem substantial. Now, I get asked a lot sometimes, just a side note, what does the contract price affect the appraisal value? And in theory, it shouldn't, but in practice, it does. Okay? So again, if I was saying if we go out blind, no contract price in front of us, this might be what we get, right? Let's say you stick a contract in front of the appraisers at 540. This median is going to shift over to the right at 540. And that's okay. In my opinion, and everything I say to you here today is just my opinion. And other appraisers might have different ones. In my opinion, that's okay, right? If you've listed a house and you're within this natural expected value range for that property, I think an appraiser should get you the value, if it's within reason. Now, if you start listing this house at 560 and 570, which might fall outside this natural range, that's when we're going to have some issues, where you're going to start having, there's very few appraisers that might get you that value at that price, right? And you're probably going to start coming in under that, right? Oh, there was one more. I'm missing another one down here. Basically, what was that slide? There's one point I was going to make on this slide. I don't know. That's okay. All right. So that's a little bit about what my job is, and we're finding value. A little bit about that. Okay. So how do appraisers select comps, man? Because it seems like when you get these reports, you think, what were they thinking? This isn't anything I had on my CMA. These aren't anything that my buyers would have chosen instead of this house. It doesn't make any sense. Well, let's talk about the rules for selecting comps. You guys ready? There are no rules. There is nowhere on an iron, stone tablet that says thou must select comparables that are within a 10%. There's nowhere that says that. There is no singular body who is giving rules to appraisers. Okay? Now, that being said, there are guidelines, suggestions, best practices, and there are some restrictions that are put on appraisers, basically by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, since they're the biggest conglomerators of loans. When they say, hey, this is what we want to see on appraisal reports so that we will buy them from the originators, then that's the type of restrictions I have to work under because that's what the lenders want and that's what they want. Okay? So we'll talk about a couple of these restrictions and some of these best practices. So basically what we as appraisers are doing, we're supposed to take these best practices, we're supposed to use logic and sound reasoning to come up with competent, reliable results, okay? And perfection is not a prerequisite for reliability, okay? So it doesn't have to be perfect. There's always going to be errors on a report. There's some sort of like 300 different little boxes or lines I can check or uncheck or change my comments on. So it's not always going to be perfect, but we need to show as appraisers, we need to be able to back up that we use sound reasoning, we use logic, and that's why our report is a reliable piece of work. So when I'm selecting comparables, I'm working under this idea of the principle of substitution, okay? Which says the maximum value of a property usually is established by the cost of acquiring an equivalent substitute property that has the same use and design. Basically, you are worth what your neighbors say you're worth. Your neighbor's house is what they've sold for, okay? And when we think of any goods or services in the market, if I want to go buy a good or a service, I'm going to look around and see what other similar goods and services are being sold for in the market. Something that could be a substitute. It's the same with properties, the same with real estate. When I go to appraise a 2,500 square foot Rambler in West Jordan, I'm going to look at its neighbors. And if the neighbors who are also 2,500 square foot Ramblers are selling between 510 and 550, well then guess what? Your value is what your neighbors' sold prices say you are. Your value is somewhere between 510 and 550 if that's what other similar products in the market are selling for. Okay? So, when I'm selecting comparables in all appraisers, we are looking for homes that are as similar as possible, as close as possible in proximity, and as recent as possible. The ideal comp for an appraiser is the neighbor which has a cookie cutter house which sold yesterday, okay? And the farther I get from that, the farther I go out to, now a mile away on a different size home, built in a different year, sold 6 months ago, I'm getting farther and farther away, or further and further away from what could be considered the most, representative, indicator of value, okay? So I want to stay as close as possible and as similar as possible, okay? So, like I said, there aren't exactly rules, but I have some guidelines, okay? So this is what I do every time I get a report and I'm going to start selecting comparables. This is my process. This is generally what most appraisers are going to do, okay? So we start 1 mile, and I use the radius tool. Everybody know how to use the radius tool, the search criteria, the search ones, okay? If you don't, find an agent who I can teach you. This is how all appraisers are going to start doing comps. And in that radius tool, you can say, I want a 1 mile circular radius around this exact point. Now, why do we choose 1 mile? This is one of those things that the lenders like to see, okay? If I put in a comp on my report that's over 1 mile, when I send it in to be reviewed, somewhere along the reviewing line, a little red flag is going to go up, and someone's going to have to go search in my comments to see if I explain myself as to why I popped the 1 mile sacred bubble and why I'm using comps that aren't within 1 mile, and see if my reasoning is sound, okay? And appraisers, we don't necessarily like red flags to go up when we turn in reports. We don't like getting revisions and have to come back and explain ourselves. We like to turn in a report that's going to be seamless, that's going to be accepted, and that's going to be reliable. So, we're going to generally try to stay within 1 mile. It's a generally accepted principle that homes that are closer to the subject property are better indicators of value than those that are far away. That's just a generally accepted principle when it comes to appraisal and valuations. Okay? I'm going to stay within the past 90 days. And this can shift. A couple of years ago, I used to start at 180 days. And I would consider that a recent. A couple months ago, I was like 30 days, maybe like 10 to 15 days with how quick the market was increasing. And if we start seeing a decreasing market, you got to tighten that because you don't want giant, time adjustments. You want the recent data. Okay, so we're going to stay as recent as possible. Another one of the sacred little bubbles that we try not to pop is the style of the home. If you're a Rambler, I'm going to compare you to Ramblers. If you're a two-story, condo, townhome, etc. which again, I understand doesn't always fit within what the agent does, because maybe your client doesn't care if it's a Rambler or a 2-story or a tri or a multi. They want a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house with a 2-car garage, and the style doesn't really affect them. So when you go to do a CMA, you're just looking at 4-bedroom, 3-baths, regardless of the style, maybe regardless of the acreage, right? But me as an appraiser, I am going to stick to this hard, because Ramblers and 2-stories in a broader market in general have different desirability. They have different functionality. They have a different allocation of above ground square footage and below ground square footage. And if I am working under the principles of substitution and I want comparables that are as similar as possible, I'm going to keep these very stringent on this rule. Can I break it? Yes. Do I break it? Yes. Are any of these rules set in stone, like I said? No. They can all be broken. I can do whatever I want if it's necessary. If you're a really odd house, I might have to go 5 miles to find something that's similar to you. I will explain and do a lot of CYA in my notes to say exactly why I'm breaking all of these sacred appraisal levels. But in general, if we're talking about the run-of-the-mill, general Rambler 2-story house here in the Salt Lake Valley, you should be able to find similar styles within a mile within the last 90 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months. Okay? In general, I'll start around 1,000 square feet, either direction. So if you're a 5,000 square foot home, I'm going to look at houses that are 4,000 square feet to about 6,000 square feet. Why is that? I don't want to make a ton of adjustments. I'm going to talk in a second about there are limits to the gross adjustment amounts I can make on a report without it sending up big red flags. Okay? So if you're a 5,000 square foot home, and you send me a comp for consideration that's an 8,000 square foot home, to even get that to adjust the square foot to get close to what subject property is that I'm appraising, that's a lot of percentage adjustments, and that looks bad on the report, it looks bad to the lenders, and it will require me to do a lot of explaining. Okay, so if there are better comps that are closer in size, I'm going to default to those first. Okay. So something I want to point out here, within the 1 mile radius in the similar styles, if you're going to value a home and the comps that are similar style in its neighborhood don't support what you want to list it for, so you close your eyes to those comps, but you look at the subdivision a mile away, that's going to get you in trouble when it comes to the appraisal. Because the appraisers, they're going to look at the subdivision sales and say those trump the ones that are a mile away because they're closer. Okay? So you can't just close your eyes to the ones you don't like because they sold for not as much as what your client is hoping for. Because when it comes to an appraiser, they might say, no, that's not going to work. Okay? Question, we are going to do a bunch of Q&A at the end. So if you want to hold it for the end. Okay. Yes, I forgot to mention that. I'm going to go for maybe about 30 minutes here, and then we're going to open it up Q&A. You guys fire your whatever you got, and then I'll do my best to answer them, okay? Okay, age. For older homes, I'm usually within about 10 years. If you're built in the 1950s, try to stick to homes built in the 1940s, maybe to the 1960s, okay? Those are generally considered to be probably pretty similar in appeal and design and their construction and their functional utility. Okay, if you're new, I think if you're built in 2015, you probably want to stay within the next, maybe 5 years. There's a big difference between a home built in 2015 as a home built in 1995. Okay? The appeal, the design, the style, those are big differences, right? So try to start with a pretty tight window here. If there aren't comps, if there aren't good comparables within the tight window, where I usually start, I think people should start, then you got to start opening those windows up if you need to find other comparables. Okay? This is a good place to start. Okay, then it comes to acreage, garage count, site location, special features. You got to find something that's similar. Okay? And there is a rule for appraisers which says that we must bracket all of the features in a home, including the appraised value. Now, this is a term that sometimes I don't feel like agents have ever heard or maybe don't understand when appraisers talk about having to bracket something. So you think of brackets, right? Maybe on when you're typing something, you put brackets, right? There's one on one side, one on the other, okay? We have to do this for every single aspect of a home. And it looks something like this. Wait for it. Wait for it. I'm not getting anything else. Can you advance it? I had a nice graphic here. Spent lots of time designing. Okay, well basically what bracketing means, if my house is, let's say 1,000 square feet, I am not allowed to have all the comps on my report be bigger than 1,000 feet. Have them all be 1,500 or 2,000 square feet. That's not allowed. I have to have something that's a little bit smaller, maybe like 800 or 900 square feet, and I have to have something a little bit bigger. And I have to do this, something bigger, something smaller, maybe something not as nice, something bigger, for every aspect of the report. Acreage, age, GLA, basement, bathroom count, garage count. Does it have a basement kitchen? I have to have another sold comp on my report with a basement kitchen, otherwise I can't give the basement kitchen any value. I have to have it on my report and show that there is some sort of contributory value that I can show within the sales price, which is why I'm giving it value, okay? So sometimes, if your house has kind of an odd thing where maybe you have a carport and everything else has 1 or 2 car garage, I have to go out in distance or back in time or include anything I can to show there are homes that only have 1 carport. They do sell, and this is the contributory value for it. And there it is, too. All right. Now, why do lenders want to see this? Well, they like something that looks really pretty like this. See over here, in the middle, this is the house I'm appraising. Got it? Over here, I got a house that's a little older, a little smaller, a 1-car garage, it's maybe only fair condition. And look, it sold for less than what I'm appraising it for. That makes logical sense. There's a house that's smaller, not a nice, and they want to see it adjust up. And then they want to see, oh look, here's a house that's a little newer, a little bigger, a little nicer. It sold for $550 and it adjusted down. And it meets nicely in the middle. Okay? This is like the ideal appraisal that we're turning in. Smaller, bigger, they all meet nicely in the middle. I give it the appraised value right in the center. That's golden, okay? That's what, again, on the lender level, what they want to see. And when I don't provide that, they say, hey, what happened? You broke a mile, you don't bracket the bathrooms, explain yourself. And I got to go there and say, oh, there wasn't anything I could find, but I didn't want to go back in time that far, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Anyway, so this is something appraisers have to bracket. So especially if you have a house that you're trying to list or you're trying to buy, and it's got some sort of weird element that's not super common, you might see one really random, really old sale on the report on page like 34 down at the back that I had to include just to bracket that one feature. Okay? I can say I'm giving it less value because it's far away and it's old, or I can say it's valid and I have to give it value. That's a whole other discussion. But basically, you're going to have comps on the report that bracket all the features. Okay? So again, you can't just choose way bigger houses on way bigger acreage and assume you can adjust it all the way down to where you want. You got to have things on both sides and show that it adjusts to where you think it's going to be working. Okay? Okay, retain low gross adjustments amounts. So again, if you're selling a home for $500,000, or you think I should use, there's a comp in the neighborhood that's sold for $1 million, that's got to help my value, right? Not really. That's not a comp I can use. If you're trying to sell a house for $500,000 or $600,000, and I try to put on a comp that sold for $1 million, I've got to make 50% adjustments to get it back down to your range, and that's going to send lots of red flags up. And lenders and the powers that be that send me corrections and ask for explanations, if I go over 25%, I got a lot of explaining to do. Ideally, they want to see, low, 10%, under 10% is awesome. If I can do 2, 3, 5% gross adjustment, that means I have selected comparables that are really similar to this property and should indicate that the value I'm giving is reasonable and reliable and accurate. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're doing your CMAs. If they're wildly different in size and acreage and garage count and condition, that might not be a comparable appraiser is actually going to put on his or her sales grid, because it's not going to fly. Okay? And then again, one of the guidelines, and this is, if there's any hard rule in appraising, is this one. I got to have 3 sold comps, and they ask for 1 listing. Listing is just for support, we call it a supporting variable. I don't put any weight on what it's listed for in my final valuation. So that again, listings do not affect appraised values. And neither do the number of offers you get, okay? Now, then I gotta make adjustments. How many of you noticed a little bit ago all the auto adjustments in your CMAs disappeared? What the heck, right? Well, I've got a slide here to give you a bunch of general adjustments. Now, how appraisers derive adjustments is a whole other class that I've taught, which could take up a whole other 30, 40 minutes of time. It's statistical analysis, regression analysis, paired sales analysis to come up with each individual attribute's contributory value. How much does each square foot of your acreage contribute to the overall value? Well, you got to do a lot of math to get there, okay? And I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm just going to skip to the end and show you what the answers are. Sound good? So, if you want to write these down, this is what you could input into your CMA, which I think right now should give you a pretty good idea of at least a good starting point for what's generally being adjusted for in the market right now. Again, asterisk next to all of this, this is all of Landin's opinion. Another appraiser might get up here and say, I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's my opinion. Okay, so acreage, $1.5 to $2.5 per square foot. Age, I usually go about $500 per year that is different. Bathrooms, okay, depending on how nice the bathroom is, maybe like the level of finishes if you're a custom bathroom or a basic bathroom. But basically, I'm going to start $5,000 to $10,000 for an additional full bathroom. I cut that in half for half bathrooms. I think that makes sense. So $2.5 to $5K for a half bathroom. GLA, so thank you, my wife. She's also mentioned bathrooms. 3/4 are considered full bathrooms. They're treated the same. There's no difference between half and 3/4. If you've got a shower, you're considered a full bathroom. Yeah, full and 3/4 the same thing. Okay, learn one, after another. Thank you. GLA, on a report, the GLA, which is the gross living area, so above grade square footage, which is anything on the main floor, but is treated separately and valued differently than basement square footage. Okay? I don't know if you knew that. That's how it's treated. They're on separate lines. They're given separate valuations. GLA right now, I feel like I'm between $50 to $75 a square foot for GLA when I'm making adjustments. Okay? Now, basements, I know in the CMA function and on appraisal report, we also treat differently your total basement area versus your finished basement area. So for total, just your general basement square footage, I'm $8 to $12. Okay, I usually land around the $10 range right now. Okay, and then for total, I basically double. You're between 16 to 24. So if you have a fully finished basement, basically I'm going to be saying I'm valuing your fully finished basement area, somewhere around the $30 to $45 per square foot range for a fully finished basement. Okay, that track? Okay, garages. Right now, I usually do about $5,000 to $10,000 per day. So the difference between a 2-car and 3-car could be $5,000 to $10,000 adjustment. Could be more, could be less. Generally, this is where I'm landing at. Okay, but again, there's a lot of kind of figuring and analyzing I'm doing in the moment as I'm doing reports, but this is generally where I'm at. Okay, and then basement kitchens. I threw this in here because this is pretty common here in Utah. A lot of places with basement kitchens, I'm usually given that $7,500 to $10,000, maybe depending on how nice the kitchen is, again, how nice the finishes are, maybe it's utility. That's kind of what I'm giving for that. People always ask me about pools. Pools are, I don't know, they're hard. Some people don't even want a pool. Some people pay, 6 figures for a pool. I think in general, I usually give about $25,000 for a pool. If it's in a neighborhood that makes sense. I ran into pools in the backyard of a tiny house in Kearns, and I gave it no value because it didn't make sense in the market, right? But in general, pool might be $20,000 to $25,000. Okay, now, those freaking appraisers, man, you come in, we screw everything up, and you say you're way undervalued. You don't know what you're talking about, and I'm gonna put in a reconsideration of value here. How can we do that successfully? Here's some tips. Don't tell them you got it from me, okay? I don't want to upset my own kind. But I'm peeling back the curtains here and giving you quivers in your arrows in your quiver here. Okay, so like we've talked about, when I choose comps, I'm going to try to keep my criteria pretty narrow. Why? Because it's a good defensible position for when we upset somebody. Or when someone doesn't like our appraisal and they send it to the board and I got to go in front of them and explain myself. If I can show that I've kept it tight on the age, how far away, the gross adjustments, I can look at that and say, this is pretty hard to come at me and find, weaknesses in this appraisal because I've kept it tight. The wider it goes, the more I'm opening up myself for people having issue or being able to find faults within my report. Okay? So, just don't be combative. I've got calls from agents, they call and they're pissed. Okay, and understandably, I came in, $20,000 or $30,000 under value. I apologize. I don't like doing that. It happens. They call and they're angry. I just can't believe it. You don't know that I've been in the industry for how many years and we got 20 offers. I'm like, okay, you know what? Show me the comps. That's where you have to start fighting. You can't fight on I know better than you or you didn't consider. I don't know. You gotta fight with comps. Look at the criteria on the report. Okay? On the report, you're gonna see how far away are these comps. Are they within a mile? Okay, well then the comps you send to fight better be within a mile too. If I keep my comps within a half-mile bubble, you send me things a mile and a half away, I can easily say, no, my comps are closer, the better indicators of value, I'm not going to win that one. And that's all I got to put on there. No, I'm not going to check that one out. Because it does not meet the really tight criteria I already have in the appraisal. Okay? Thank you, that's what I just said. You've got to combat an appraisal with more similar comparables. You've got to show that what you're sending are better indicators of value than what's already used on the report. And you've got to point out why. Point out why. Say, hey, this comp's condition is better or more similar to what you've got on the report, right? Unless what they've got on the report is all similar conditions, right? Or this comp is closer. It's similar in size, whatever. Okay. You got to stay in that bubble. If the appraiser stayed within the Rambler to Rambler two-story to two-story criteria bubble, and you try to pop it in the reconsideration of value, it's an immediate rejection. No, not going to do it. If I'm appraising a Rambler and I've got all similar Ramblers, 6 of them, nice looking on my report, and you send me a two-story and a tri-level, no, these are different in style, different in appeal, and I will say that the comparables already used on the report are better indicators of value than the ones you're sending me. They're not being added. I'm not changing the value. Okay, it's as easy as that. Again, kind of pointing this out. Don't send things that are really far away if the appraiser has used things really close. That's a really easy way for you to say, no, not going to look at it. Don't send things with nice size and acreage. And then a little bit of sometimes I get sent brand new comps when I'm appraising something built in like 2013. I know there's a brand new subdivision right next door, but those aren't the best indicators of value. It's the ones that are built, in a similar time frame. So, unless your listing of the home you're trying to value was built in the last couple of years, don't try to send brand new comps, brand new bills to appraisers to try to get them to use those on the report. They're probably not going to do it because there's a big difference in appeal and desirability between a house that's built brand new versus one that's even 5, 6 years old. You all agree on that? Good. Okay, so that is my crash course on thinking like an appraiser. Okay? Value, comps, the criteria, the adjustments we're making, and some tips on kind of how to do some better reconsiderations of that. So, that's what I can prepare for. I'm ready to answer any and all questions anyone might have.
But first, let's give a round of applause. Like I said, he's very brave coming to a group full of realtors. I'm sure there's sometimes people put down the crossbows. We do love him. He was brave. It was hard to get the appraiser here. I'm telling you. But we do have the question and answer phase, and we have mic runners. So if you have a question, please stand up. A mic runner will come to you and you can ask the question.
And we have questions down here too.
Hi, this is Steve Perry.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, I want to thank you for being here and being so brave. I do agree with most of your presentation, so I just have just one question, and it's not about your presentation. How do appraisers, so this last year, right, prices are going crazy every week, every 2 weeks. That house just went from 20,000 equity to 40 to 60 to 100 to 200,000 equity. How can appraisers, I don't know how to say this, get away with appraising the house for the higher contract amount this last 2 years, you know what I mean? Because your job is actually, like you said, to report the past, but now all of a sudden everybody wants 50,000 higher on this offer. How do you guys justify that higher amount when it hasn't got a history of that higher amount?
I think the short answer is a lot of times we weren't. In the last year, I've come in undervalued more in the last year and a half than I had in the prior maybe 5 years before. Huh? Right, and we can do time adjustments, okay? So I was doing pretty aggressive time adjustments, like 2% per month, and sometimes even higher, a few months ago when things were crazy, okay? And I was trying to keep up. But what we run into, I think what you're trying to point out, we must bracket all features including appraised value, okay? If, especially if we're looking at maybe a townhome or a condo subdivision, if the highest sale ever in the condo subdivision in general is 310, and you're under contract for 325, I might not be able to appraise it at that no matter what, because the highest sale I even have to use to put on my report might be 310. And because of this bracketing rule, I can't appraise it for more than 310 unless I can show a sale that is equal to or greater than what I'm appraising at. So, yes, when you are trying to do the highest sale ever in a subdivision or in an area, that makes it really hard for appraisers. Because the upper end for what your house can appraise for gets capped by whatever the highest sales in that area are already. And you may be keeping up with the market, and maybe you're at a 2 to 3% increase from what the recent sale was a month ago, but because of bracketing, I might just not be able to get it. Does that answer your question?
No.
No? Let me see here. How do we justify getting the higher and higher? I guess going back to time adjustments.
So what I'm looking at is, how did we end up where we are today, right? How did the appraisers allow for the constant increase in each neighborhood? Because it seems to me that appraisers can help control the market by doing exactly what you said you would do,
Yes.
right?
So you're getting back to what an appraiser's job is. My job is not to be a check and balance in the market. I am not here to keep agents in line or buyers in line or help rein in the market. That is not my job, okay? I'm here to give an opinion of value. And as prices went up and people came in with cash, right? Anybody have an appraisal come in low and have the buyer have to bring cash to the table to make up the gap, right? Well, I appraised it low, but you bought it for more than I appraised for. You now set a new high. So when the next guy comes to appraise a month later, there's a new highest. And maybe he can get you to that point. And maybe the buyer pays $10,000 more from that point, and they set a new high. Okay? So I guess I'm not.
So do you guys take into consideration that cash gap that was paid and put that in value?
That's not something we know. Okay, when I look at a comp, I know how much it's sold for. I don't know how much it raised for. So no, it's not. I only look at how much it's sold for. And whether your buyer paid full cash for it, or they got a loan for half of it, or 90%, or 99%, I don't know that. All I know is what it's sold for, and that's the information I can use going forward. What has sold in the past, and what I'm appraising is within that range, great. If the contract price is way over, and I come in under value, what you do with that, whether you reduce your price or you come in cash later, that's not something that gets reported back to me or any other appraiser.
Thank you.
So. They just say, yeah, there's lots of people paying above appraised value, which put it up. I can't control it. I can't tell a person, no, don't you bring cash into this. I didn't give you permission to buy that much. You do whatever you want. Where we at?
All right, I got the mic, so I guess I'm next. So my question is this, similar to what Steve just said, maybe phrased in a different way. One of your slides said your house is worth what your neighbor says your house is worth. So if that's true, then properties would never go up in value. But we all know in practicality, properties do go up in value. So as a realtor trying to do a CMA, as you were giving us some points on how we can make adjustments on our CMAs, what can we do, or how can we, is there a figure, can we use appreciation tables for the last 6 months, last year, to help us make adjustments to our CMAs?
I think, yes, if the market is increasing, they're using time adjustments. And a little bit ago, I gave a class at my wife's brokerage, and I was saying, you better demand 1 to 2% adjustments per month from appraisers. Right now, you might not want that because they could be going in the opposite direction. Okay. You are what your neighbors say you're worth, so values can't go up. Value is a range, okay? And this range, if values are increasing, the median, the center point of this range is going to continue to march forward, right? And go up as maybe the outskirts of the range. So maybe you do have a person that falls in love with the property, and they're going to pay on the edge of what the natural value range would be, and they want to pay that, okay? That's going to shift this whole center of what the expected value range could be. Is going to scoot it forward. So I understand this idea. My wife and I have talked about this. Like if you can never appraise a house for more than what the last house is appraised for, then how are prices ever increasing? You run into that a lot, like I said, in condo and townhomes. When you're in a single-family home, it's sometimes easier for an appraiser to say, okay, well, I can find something that sold for a bit more to be able to bring down to justify my price, because it might be on the edge of one of these adjusted values, okay? So how do we do that? We find a comp that sold for more. And if we can't, we appraise it under, and a buyer's got to make the difference if they want. Yeah, that is kind of a catch-22, but I understand it, but we play with the comps we can find. And in a single-family home, it's usually easier to find something a little bigger and justify it and bring it back up. Does that make sense to you? Kind of? Over to you, I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, 2. 1, how's solar doing? And second, when you're talking about the 1 mile radius, do you take into account the difference in neighborhoods? Sometimes we have on this side of the river versus that side of the river, that sort of thing.
Yes. First, solar. Solar's a tough one. The issue with solar is it's hard for me as an appraiser to extract an exact contributory value from the solar panels. Why is that? Because the only information I have is a checkbox that says yes or no, it happened. Okay? If you put solar panels on in the 80s, you're going to check yes. If you put really stellar, top of the line solar panels on in 2022, you're still going to check yes. I have no idea what your kilowatt, how many kilowatts you're producing. I don't know how new the panels are. I don't know if there's 1 panel or 50 of them. I don't know what kind of contributory value that has to that household, because I don't know what the electricity bill is. Did it wipe it all out? Is it only half of it? So that's what solar is really hard. Okay? I will usually give it something if I can find a comp. If I can find a comp in the area that also has solar, so I have to bracket it if I'm going to give it value, I'll try to kick it 5 to 10 grand probably. But getting the full value, I know, solar can go for $40,000 to $100,000 depending on the array you're putting in. That's not something I can really extract the full value out of, and it's different for every home. So that's how solar is. You might get something, don't be surprised if you don't get anything. And what was your second question? Oh, the 1 mile. Yes. For instance, like in Salt Lake, if I'm going to go east of 1300 east, right? That's usually like, I'm going to go above. There's some other major ones. If I'm crossing over like State Street or Redwood, that's why I try to stay within the neighborhood if I can. right? If I'm not to find something who's got the same subdivision name as the subject, I'm crazy, I'm just stick there if I can. Or if I am going over kind of major dividing ways that we find throughout in Utah County, I might have to look at the average sales in that subdivision versus the average sales in my subdivision, and I'm gonna make a location adjustment. Because, hey, looks like this subdivision, just because it's east of 1300 East or east of Highland or whatever, sell for 20 or 30K more, so I'm gonna make a location adjustment and say, they're just for whatever reason worth more because of what it's.
Is it working? Okay. So with a property that doesn't have like a ton of, like a unique property, or even if we're getting into luxury, like maybe a property that doesn't have a ton of comparables to use right away, and we're having to stretch some of our limits, what do you feel is more important? Staying closer to the subject property or staying closer in square footage? Like when you're having to kind of start stretching out to get more comps to use, does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're asking, is it more important to stay close or to find things of similar size?
Yeah,
I think ideally, I would choose both.
but if you can't, like if you're like trying to find more comps and you're just struggling, you're like, I'll add a little here or I'll add a little there.
It's hard to say, it's a case-by-case basis. You might have to do both. I mean, if there's not comps in the immediate area, you might have to go farther out and include things that are wider in range. I think if I had to choose one, I'd probably say size.
Size would be better to stay closer to, and then going further out?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If you've got a big house, brand new, in the middle of maybe an older subdivision and nothing is that size, you're gonna have to go out. You probably aren't gonna use the much smaller houses right now, so you're gonna have to go farther out and find something similar size. Size is one of the main, most important driving values. So I would say, yeah, you guys think of size. Find some houses that are similar size, for sure.
Working, okay. So I'm an investor, we buy brand new construction, we finish the basements. So the issue is, everybody in the subdivision, most of the builders don't do the basement.
Right.
So my house is obviously much more expensive because the basement's finished. I went through your prices, like how much the square footage, you give credit for the basement, there's kitchen in the basement, the bathrooms, etc.
Yeah.
So in my example, the house is 1,500 square feet. If the builder would have finished the basements, the builder would have charged close to $100,000. We're into it like $75,000. Based off of the numbers, if I did them correctly, I'd only get like less than $50,000. Does that seem right to you?
Does it seem right?
Did I do the math right?
Oh,
I guess is
yeah,
the
you
question.
probably did the math right, yeah, but the math checks out in my head as you were saying that. Cost does not equal contributory values, okay? Finishing a basement, you're lucky to get back close to what you spend on it. That's what I usually tell people. Hey, if I finish my basement, am I gonna see that reflected in my home value? I'd say you'll be lucky if you get it at 6s, right? So usually, yeah, the contributory value, and I'm extracting this from what I can tell, and what I can see is the contributory value for a finished basement area. Doesn't get you all the way to the construction costs.
So even going from 3 bedrooms to 6 bedrooms, there's like no consideration in the math for that I heard.
You're right, actually, you will notice there's one thing I didn't put on here, and that's bedroom adjustments. I, as an appraiser, and many of my kind, we don't make adjustments for the number of bedrooms, especially in the basement. Because if you want a theater, and a game room, and, an apartment, great. If you want 5 bedrooms, you get a big family, good for you. That's personal preference, okay? That might sway a buyer to you versus another house. But me as an appraiser, I make size adjustments. I make total square foot adjustments. And I consider the bedroom count being included in those adjustments, okay? I start to get away from that in condos and townhomes where maybe the size is only a little bit bigger, but there's an additional bedroom, and the price went for way more, where the size adjustment doesn't account for all of it. But generally, in a single-family home, I'm not making bedroom count adjustments because maybe you've got 3 bedrooms, maybe you combine the 2 small bedrooms into a master. It's hard for me to say exactly which one's going to be more preferable in the market. In my opinion, I just go to size. Yeah.
Either, so I have two quick questions. Do appraisers see what the home is under contract for?
Yes, we get the contract, we see we see the contract and every addendum and everything.
And then on that graph that you showed, and you showed the subject property, and then you showed a comp that was higher and one that was lower.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, you said that lenders like to see that.
Yeah.
Well, what if you have comps that are exactly like your subject? Do you use those first?
Yes.
Or do you present those to the lender first, or this?
Yeah, if I have comps that are exactly cookie cutter, the exact same square footage, bedroom, bathroom, size, acres, of course, I will use those first.
Okay.
And that is considered to be bracketed, so, the smaller and bigger is only necessary if I can't find something that's dead on.
Okay.
Like if I have, going back to like townhomes or condos, I'll usually have a pretty good selection of comps that are exactly the same size, square foot, everything. I'll use those, I'll make no adjustments whatsoever because they're all exactly cookie cutter, and I'll give you some sort of an average of what that range has sold for. And that's basically what I would do.
Okay. I just wanted to touch.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, quick question for you. How do you see the future of appraising from the appraiser standpoint with desktop appraisals? And do you think that the overall pros will outweigh the cons of doing sight unseen? And will that help to rein in some of the exorbitant appraisal costs? I mean, not so much, I didn't see that so much in Utah, but around the country, it wasn't unheard of to see like $3,500 appraisal costs for brush and things like that. So here in Utah.
Where was that at? I never even moved.
I know, yeah, California is probably one of the big ones, but yeah, there were some pretty steep fees, and I mean, here in Utah, I don't think I ever saw an appraisal rushed over probably $850, but around the country, it really got to be a problem of appraisal. And I'm wondering if desktop appraisals will start to help that cost, or if you see the cons of that, of desktops outweighing the pros.
Yeah.
Just want to get your opinion.
Good question. So, multifaceted. Yeah, appraisal fees here in Utah aren't exorbitant. And I think it is unfortunate that when things were crazy, that appraisers had the leverage to say, yeah, pay me $3,000 and I'll do it for you. That's a greedy appraiser, but in this type of market, nobody's, I'm taking whatever they send me at this moment right now because it's slower. So, supply and demand for appraisal fees, I guess that sucks that they went that high in some places, and that's, I don't think that, okay, so desktop appraisals, I think a desktop appraisal can be just as accurate as an appraisal that I do, just as accurate. I think it can be pretty similar. If I've got a really recent listing that has accurate, like a lot of accurate photos and accurate information, I can sit at my desk without going to it and give you a really accurate appraisal. Is that going to adjust my fee much? Actually, no. Because the hardest part, the most work of an appraisal, goes into the actual report typing. My inspection, I use a laser measurer, I've got a system, I take a picture, I've got support staff that does the sketch for me. I can be in and out of the house in 10 minutes, so not doing the physical inspection doesn't actually save me a lot of work and effort. And most of my fee is not derived in me being able to take pictures and measure correctly. It's in me being able to analyze the market and give you a proper valuation. So I do a lot of desktop appraisals. Agents call me all the time and say, hey, I've got a listing coming up. Can you do a quick appraisal for me? Let me know what you think it could land at. I'll do that from my desk all day long. I give a slight discount. Then I'll have a full appraisal, but it's not much. So
How much?
what was that?
How much?
Oh, a desktop appraisal? Oh, shoot. I don't know. I'd probably still charge you like $300, $350. I'm usually like $400, $450 for a normal appraisal. If you're friends with my wife, then I'm like, oh, well, you know what? I'll just, I don't know. So.
To be honest.
So yeah, I think desktop appraisals can be valuable if there's information. Do I think it'll affect, fees much? I hope not.
So,
I've got 1 minute, or am I done?
we have a minute, go ahead, one more question, Chris.
Do I do retroactive appraisals? Sure. I'll do retroactive, I'll do ARV, I'll do whatever you want. Whatever you want, I got it.
We have 45 seconds, anyone have any questions?
If you want my info.
I had a quick
Yeah.
question on renovations.
Yes.
So you have a house in the neighborhood, all the homes were built like 50 years ago, but you've remodeled every square inch of the house, done all the landscaping. How does that factor into the appraisal?
I gotta find something that can bracket your condition. I either gotta go out farther or go back in time. I gotta find something that's been decked out, and I'm gonna use that to, and if it's sold for a lot more, I'm gonna base your value on that. So it'll affect it, it'll go up. But I gotta be able to bracket it.
How much weight is on the quality of the home?
How much weight on the quality of like the finishes? I would say a lot. That's another big indicator of value. I really try to find homes that look similar in quality and feel when I'm doing appraisals.
If you guys can give a hand to Landin, one of my loan officers actually was working with his wife on a deal that they had a challenge with an appraisal, and Landin stepped in on the backseat and actually won that appraisal dispute, so he knows what he's talking about. I think if you do not understand bracketing, I think that's the thing that most is understated and not understood in the industry. To bracket a feature, meaning you have to have something higher, bigger, and something go up. And sometimes, even coming in with a house that is less in purchase price will still actually increase the value of the home. So don't always look for the higher one, it's sometimes the lower one that will actually boost your appraisal up because of how it brackets. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad we won that for you.
It's good, he really knows what he's talking about. Thank you so much, Landin.
Yes.